There was a time I believed in softness, in people, in promises that sounded like forever. Back then, my world still had color. Laughter echoed through my walls. Hope wasn't something I had to fight for. It was simply there. But peace has a strange way of dying quietly. It doesn't explode. It fades. It slips through cracks you didn't even know existed. One day you wake up and everything's gone. Not because the world ended, but because someone decided you didn't matter anymore. That's how betrayal feels. Not like a knife. No. It's slower than that. It's the sound of someone you trusted walking away and taking the last piece of you with them. I remember that moment. The silence after their goodbye was louder than any scream I could have made. My heart didn't just break. It collapsed. The air turned to glass. Every breath cut deeper than the last. And for a while, I waited. I waited for someone to notice the blood on my soul. Waited for a hand to reach into the darkness. But no one came. Not a single soul. That's when I learned the first rule of pain. No one's coming to save you. It doesn't matter how loud you cry. It doesn't matter how pure your intentions were. When the world decides you're nothing, you learn what nothing truly feels like. You stop fighting to be seen and start staring into the mirror at the stranger staring back. That's where it began. The breaking, the burning, the birth. Because when you've lost everything, there's nothing left to fear. They say monsters are born in darkness, but that's a lie. Monsters are born in the light, in the hands of those who destroy innocence and call it growth, in the mouths of those who preach loyalty, but feed on betrayal. You called me heartless, but you were the one who burned it first. You made me this way, piece by piece, betrayal by betrayal. You taught me silence was safer than honesty. You taught me that kindness gets you killed. You taught me that the only way to survive is to become something they can no longer touch. And so I did. I buried the boy who cared. I buried the lover who waited. I buried the friend who forgave. And in that grave, I planted something else, something darker, something colder, something unstoppable. The storm that rose inside me wasn't loud at first. It whispered, it studied, it learned the rhythm of pain. And in the quiet, it began to grow. Do you know what happens when silence learns to breathe? It becomes a weapon, a blade sharper than any word, a fire that doesn't need air to burn. I didn't heal, I transformed. I stopped asking why they left. I stopped replaying what went wrong. I stopped trying to make them understand, because monsters don't beg for understanding. We build empires out of it. You see, the day I stopped crying for help was the day I started listening to the darkness. And the darkness had a voice. My voice. It told me, rise. Every scar started glowing like armor. Every heartbreak became a foundation stone. Every name I lost became another reason to build higher. They thought they buried me. They thought silence would break me. They thought I'd stay on the ground forever. But what they didn't know is that pain doesn't kill you. It forges you. And I was forged in betrayal, tempered in isolation, sharpened by loss. Now I walk differently, talk differently, breathe differently. Because once you've been to hell, the flames no longer scare you. You wear them. You become them. I used to see myself as human. Now, I see something else. Something primal. Something ancient. Something that doesn't need saving. And it's almost poetic how they look at me now with fear in their eyes, when they were the ones who built the very thing they fear. They left a monster behind, but monsters don't crawl. Monsters build, monsters rise, monsters remember. So I don't hate them anymore. Hate is too human. I simply thank them for the fire, for the silence, for the lesson that no one teaches you, that when love dies, power takes its place. I'm no longer looking for closure, because closure is just another word for permission to move on. And I don't need permission. Not from them, not from anyone. The world made me its villain, and I accepted the crown. Because sometimes to survive, you must become everything they're afraid of. And I did. They left me for dead. But I didn't die. I evolved. I adapted. I became. And now, I'm not coming back to prove them wrong. I'm coming back to show them what they created. You called me heartless, but it was your fire that built my crown.
There's a certain silence that follows destruction. Not peaceful, not holy, just empty. After the betrayal, after the walls fell, there's a quiet where your name doesn't echo anymore. You walk through your own mind like a battlefield, stepping over memories that used to smile. I remember the nights, endless, cold, loud with thoughts I couldn't silence. You ever stare at the ceiling long enough that it starts to stare back? You start hearing your own heartbeat like a countdown. Each thump reminding you that you're still here, but not the same. People tell you time heals. They lie. Time doesn't heal. It hardens. It dries your tears until they turn into iron. Until the things that used to hurt start to burn instead. And that's what happened to me. I stopped crying. I started boiling. The pain didn't fade. It evolved. It went from ache to obsession. From heartbreak to hunger. From silence to strategy. I became addicted to the darkness because it was the only thing that didn't leave me. The nights were cruel, but they were honest. They didn't pretend to love me. They didn't promise to stay. They just sat there and whispered, "Become what they fear." That's how the monster started breathing. I didn't plan to change. Change forced itself on me. Every time I remembered their smile, I felt another piece of me burn away. Every time I replayed their words, I could feel my veins turn to fire. And in that fire, I found focus. Because here's the truth. People think breaking a man destroys him, but it only removes the parts that were never real. Pain doesn't take away your strength.
It was all alchemy, turning flesh into fire, turning pain into purpose. And the fire kept spreading. Not wild, not reckless, controlled, precise, unstoppable. They used to call me emotional. Now, I'm surgical. They used to say I cared too much. Now I calculate. They used to laugh at my kindness. Now they flinch at my silence. Funny, isn't it? How the same eyes that look down on you will one day look up. You see, the fall wasn't my failure. It was my foundation. It stripped me down to what was necessary. The masks fell off. The noise faded. Only truth remained. And truth is fire. It burns illusions. It purifies what's real. So when they say I changed, they're right. I went from flesh to flame, from boy to beast, from victim to vision. They built their comfort on my pain. Now they'll build their fear on my name. You left me in the dark and expected me to disappear. But you forget, the dark is where stars are born. And I became one. Not to shine for you, but to remind you what light looks like when it no longer needs permission to exist. Every scream I swallowed, every tear I buried, every ounce of pain I endured became a part of me. I don't hide it, I wear it, because monsters don't cover their scars, they crown them. And when you finally realize what you've done, it'll be too late. The man you broke is gone. In his place stands something you can't destroy, can't guilt, can't manipulate. Because I've already been through your hell, and I came out fireproof. I was made of flesh once, but pain turned me into fire. And now, I burn for no one's warmth but my own. There comes a point when the screams stop. Not because the pain is gone, but because you finally realize that no one's listening. That's when silence arrives, not as peace, but as a graveyard. A place where your old self is buried, and your new one begins to breathe. In that silence, I learned the art of stillness, the art of holding rage in my chest and shaping it instead of wasting it. You see, pain makes noise, power does not. The ones who talk the loudest are the ones still bleeding, but those who've healed in darkness. They move differently. They breathe differently. I stopped explaining myself, stopped defending my name to people who already decided what they wanted to believe, stopped reaching for hands that dropped mine the moment things got heavy. That's how beasts are born, not through anger, but through silence. When you sit alone long enough, you start hearing the voice beneath the chaos. The one whispering, they were never meant to understand you. You were meant to outgrow them. That voice became my companion, my compass, my command. In the quiet, I rebuilt my discipline. No distractions, no validation, just grind. Every morning felt like war. Every night, a funeral for who I used to be. I trained not for revenge, but for resurrection. I read in silence. I lifted in silence. I bled in silence. And in that stillness, I became something sharper than pain itself. They mistook my silence for weakness. They thought I was done. But silence isn't surrender. It's preparation. Because true beasts don't roar in the dark. They study, they wait, they evolve. I learned that emotion without control is self-destruction. Rage without purpose is suicide. So I stopped letting my pain control me and made it my general instead. When you master silence, you master yourself. You begin to see patterns. Who's real? Who's pretending? Who's feeding off your light? And when you see that clearly, you stop wasting energy trying to convince anyone of your worth. You simply become it. The silence started to feed me. I grew addicted to it because in silence there's no lies, no masks, no noise, just truth. I began to understand that solitude isn't loneliness, it's elevation. It's the throne where your mind learns to rule itself. Most people fear being alone because it forces them to face their reflection. But me? I stared so long the reflection blinked first. And when it did, I realized I was never the villain they painted me as. I was simply the consequence of their betrayal. Silence gave me sight. It showed me who deserved to stay in my empire and who was only there to take from it. It taught me that sometimes the most powerful response is none at all. You let them talk. You let them laugh. You let them misunderstand. And when the time comes, you let your results speak in a language they can't translate. I stopped talking about what I'd become. I started becoming it. Every action became a sermon. Every breath, a declaration. Every failure, a stepping stone carved in blood. Because the man who can sit in silence and not crumble is the man no one can break. I no longer needed noise to feel alive. I no longer needed crowds to feel seen. I found peace in isolation, and in that peace, I found dominance. You can't rush power. You grow it in shadows, watered by discipline, fed by pain, protected by silence. That's the secret no one tells you. Greatness doesn't shout. It whispers. It hides in the quiet hours when no one's watching. It forms in the repetitions that no one praises. They see the empire when it's finished, but they never see the nights when I was building it brick by brick, with nothing but pain as my blueprint and discipline as my hammer. I stopped waiting for opportunities. I built them. I stopped chasing peace. I became it. And the silence that once haunted me now bowed to me. Because I learned something priceless. A beast doesn't need validation to roar. He only needs a purpose to rise. So now when people ask me, how did you do it? How did you survive? I smile, because the answer isn't in what I did. It's in what I stopped doing. I stopped talking. I stopped begging. I stopped explaining. And I started building. In the end, the silence that broke me also crowned me. In the quiet where they buried me, I learned to breathe fire without making a sound. The silence didn't kill me. It taught me how to build, not from hope. That's for the naive. Not from faith. That's for the desperate. I built from rage, from clarity, from the ashes of everything they thought I'd never rise from. There's a moment after you've lost everything where your hands start to tremble. Not from weakness, but from readiness. That's when rebuilding begins. That's when the beast learns to create. I didn't need blueprints. My pain was the plan. Every scar marked where the foundation should go. Every betrayal showed me which walls to reinforce. And every sleepless night became another brick. You see, when you've been shattered, you don't build back the same. You build smarter, stronger, colder. You build knowing that everything you create must be able to stand alone. Because you learned the hard way, like nothing and no one is permanent. So I started with myself. Body first, mind second, spirit last. Because the spirit is forged through all three. I woke before the sun, not because I wanted to, but because I had to. Because the voice in my head refused to let me rest. It said, you don't get to sleep until the man in the mirror fears you. So I worked. I trained until the pain screamed louder than the memories. I read until my mind became sharper than my wounds. I bled until the weakness left my body. And with each repetition, each word, each scar, I built something no one could ever take again. Control. People think rebuilding is glamorous. It isn't. It's brutal. It's lonely. It's thousands of small, unseen wars you fight with yourself. You face the part of you that still cries for them. You face the part of you that still wants to quit. You face the whispers that tell you it's pointless, and you crush them one by one. That's the difference between victims and kings. Victims rebuild hoping to be saved. Kings rebuild knowing no one's coming. I stopped asking for a break. I started asking for the strength to keep breaking until I couldn't be broken anymore. Every failure became fuel. Every rejection became reinforcement. Every scar became structure. They thought I was gone, but while they were celebrating my downfall, I was sharpening my discipline in the dark. They said he's finished. But what they didn't realize is that you can't finish a man who builds from pain, because pain never ends, and neither do we. There were days I fell, days I questioned if it was worth it, days I wanted to destroy everything I'd built just to feel alive again. But that's what rebuilding truly is. The daily decision to continue. No audience, no applause, just the sound of your heartbeat and the echo of your purpose hitting the walls of your chest. And slowly, the monster became an architect, not of revenge, but of resurrection. I no longer wanted to destroy them. I wanted to outlast them, to exist as proof that I didn't need them, to stand so tall they couldn't look me in the eye without seeing the empire they helped ignite. You see, the beauty of rebuilding is this. When you rise again, you rise different. You rise with the memory of the ashes still in your lungs. You rise with the fire still whispering in your blood. You rise not to return, but to reign. And while they lived comfortably in the illusion that they'd won, I was constructing a reality they'd never survive in. Brick by brick, scar by scar. I learned how to move in silence and strike in thunder, how to grind with no witnesses and let results do the talking, how to walk into rooms that once held my shame and make the walls remember my name. I stopped running from my pain. I started training with it. I made it my sparring partner, my mentor, my fuel. And when I looked back, I realized something poetic. They destroyed me because they feared what I could become. And now they'll have to watch it happen. Every scar they gave me became a symbol. Every insult became an anthem. Every loss became leverage. Because when you rebuild with pain, you don't just come back. You come back bulletproof. No emotions, no attachments, just focus, just fire, just the mission. The mission to turn suffering into structure, to turn loneliness into legacy, to turn what was meant to kill you into the crown that defines you. So I kept going. When the world was sleeping, I was working. When they laughed, I was planning. When they forgot me, I was becoming unforgettable. And one day I looked at my reflection and realized I no longer recognized the man I'd become. Not because I'd lost myself, but because I'd found the version they never wanted to meet. A version born in ruin, raised in silence, and built for war. That's the moment I knew the rebuilding was complete. The man was gone. The monster had evolved, no longer broken, no longer waiting, no longer human. Now, I was the foundation of an empire. They left me in ruins, and I used every piece to build a throne. It started quietly, not with drums, not with thunder, but with footsteps. My footsteps, steady, relentless, echoing through the ruins they left behind. I didn't announce my return. I didn't need to, because when a storm rises, it doesn't need an introduction. You feel it before you see it. That's what I became. A presence. A shadow moving through the world that once mocked me. Everywhere I walked, silence followed. Because deep down, they knew. The one they buried was no longer the same. They expected a man crawling back. What they got was a force. Calm, precise, inevitable. This is what the rise feels like. Not loud celebration, but cold realization. That you no longer fit in the places that once rejected you. That you've outgrown the cage. That the pain that used to haunt you now kneels before you. Every scar that once humiliated me now glows like a crown. Every name that once wounded me became a whisper of reverence, because I didn't just rebuild, I ascended. And the beauty of it? No one saw it coming. They never do. Because true rise doesn't happen in light. It's forged in the shadows. The world measures strength by how loud you roar. But kings rise in silence. Villains rise in patience. Empires rise in darkness. They left me to rot, and I grew roots instead. Roots that pierced the ground, that drank from the fire they left me in, that turned pain into power. Now, when I speak, the earth listens. When I move, the weak tremble. Not because I seek domination, but because I became it. You see, when you've been through hell, you stop fearing the flames. You start using them. That's how I built my empire. Not with mercy, but with mastery. Not with followers, but with purpose. Not with pity, but with power. Every enemy who laughed became a stepping stone. Every betrayal became a banner. Every ghost from my past became a warning carved in blood. Don't touch what you tried to destroy. Now I walk through the ashes of my past like a king through his kingdom. Not because I conquered others, but because I conquered myself. They call it arrogance. I call it arrival. They call it ego. I call it evolution. They can't understand it because they've never been through the fire long enough to become flame. You can't explain power to those who only know comfort. You can't explain purpose to those who never lost everything. You can't explain empire to those still begging for acceptance. My empire isn't built of stone or gold. It's built of scars and silence. Every brick was molded from betrayal. Every wall was raised with resilience. Every gate was locked with discipline. And the throne, it wasn't handed to me. I carved it with my bare hands, bleeding, unbroken, unbowed. When I sit on it now, I don't see revenge. I see responsibility. Because the crown isn't made of jewels. It's made of pain, carried with grace. They stare now. They whisper. They wonder how I did it. How I rose from nothing. How I survived without them. How I turned their cruelty into currency. Simple. I learned that the loudest revenge is success built in silence. You don't argue with your past. You outgrow it. And when you finally rise, you realize the view was worth every wound. Because the higher you climb, the smaller they look. The same people who once towered over you now can't even reach your shadow. And that's the beauty of it. I don't even need to destroy them. My existence is the proof that they failed. Now, when they see me, they see the reflection of everything they could have been. If they hadn't chosen betrayal over loyalty, they can't look me in the eyes anymore. Not because they fear me, but because they see themselves in what I've become. The monster they built now stands as a monument to their mistakes. This rise wasn't about revenge. It was about reclamation. Reclaiming the fire they stole. Reclaiming the voice they silenced. Reclaiming the soul they thought they shattered. Every time I breathe, I defy their prophecy. Every time I move, I rewrite fate. I've turned my pain into empire, my empire into legend, and my silence into scripture. Now, when I speak, my words carry the weight of every scar that refused to heal quietly. I am not who I was. I am not what they remember. I am the sum of every night they forgot me. I am the proof that suffering when mastered becomes sovereignty. They left me to die. Now they live under my shadow. Because the empire they see, it's not built on me. It is me. I am the foundation. I am the fortress. I am the fire that never went out. You buried a man, but the ashes rose, and they built a throne higher than your heaven. They always come back. The ones who left you in the dark. The ones who said you'd never rise again. The ones who built their comfort on your silence. Ghosts always find their way back to the fire they started. It happens quietly. You don't expect it. Until you feel the tremor in the air. A familiar name in your inbox. A soft, "Hey, it's been a while." The same voices that vanished when you screamed for help now whisper like they never left. I don't reply, not because of pride, but because I've outgrown the language of the weak. They don't understand that time doesn't heal. It transforms. They think they're talking to the same man they betrayed, but that man was buried under their lies. The one standing before them now is forged from everything they feared. It's funny, isn't it? How people come back when the storm has cleared, when your name begins to echo again. They didn't want to stand beside you when you were fire, but now they want to bask in your flame. I see it in their eyes. That confusion, that guilt, that quiet terror. They don't know what to say. They don't know how to apologize to a man who no longer bleeds. And the truth is, I don't need their apologies. Because forgiveness isn't part of my kingdom, not anymore. When they speak, I hear static. Their words don't touch me. They just float, meaningless, in the air between two worlds. Theirs, fragile, shallow, temporary. Mine, unshaken, eternal, carved in silence and power. They ask, what happened to you? I smile. You did. They ask, why are you so cold now? I laugh. Because warmth got me killed. They can't understand that my indifference isn't hatred. It's graduation. It's the peace that comes when you finally realize you don't owe anyone your pain anymore. You reach a point where even revenge feels small. Because true dominance isn't about hurting them back. It's about watching them live in the shadow of your evolution. When I look at them, I don't see enemies. I see reminders. Every face is a scar I've already healed. Every voice is a chapter I've already closed. Every apology is a ghost begging for relevance. But the dead don't belong among the living, and I am very much alive. I let them speak. I let them squirm. I let them explain how they didn't mean it, how they've changed, how they were going through something. Everyone's sorry once you become someone. But I don't carry their ghosts anymore. I buried them in the same grave where they left me. And from that soil, my empire grew. When you rise from betrayal, you don't just surpass your enemies. You outlast their world entirely. You move beyond their comprehension, because they're still playing with emotions while you're moving with execution. They're still begging for closure while you're writing your next chapter in blood and gold. They're still pretending to have power while you are power. So I don't confront them with anger. I confront them with silence. Because silence, in the hands of the powerful, is the loudest weapon of all. You want to see fear? Don't shout. Don't threaten. Just smile. Just look through them like they never existed. That's the moment they realize you don't want revenge. You've already won. Revenge requires obsession. Victory only requires evolution. And I've evolved beyond their reach. The empire I built, they can't touch it. The peace I've earned, they can't break it. The man I've become, they can't understand him. So I let them talk, let them twist in regret, let them drown in the poison they poured for me. They'll never know what it's like to crawl through fire and come out as flame. They'll never know what it's like to lose everything and still walk like a king. They'll never know the cost of peace purchased through hell. They're tourists in my pain, but I'm a native of the battlefield. So I nod, I listen, and when they finish their speeches of sorrow and nostalgia, I simply say, you left a monster behind, and now you're standing in his empire. Their faces always drop then, because they finally see it, that I didn't rise to make them regret. I rose to make them irrelevant. I don't destroy ghosts. I outlive them. They came to apologize to a man they buried. But only the Empire answered back. The rise was never the end. It was only the beginning of dominion. Because when you've built yourself from nothing, the world itself starts to bend around your will. You don't chase power, it starts to orbit you. The Empire stands now, not on marble, not on gold, but on the bones of every version of me that had to die to get here. I walk through halls I carved from my own pain, Walls built from sleepless nights, floors forged from failure, and every corner still smells of blood and silence. But I don't flinch anymore. I belong here. This is my throne of ash, my crown of fire, and it fits perfectly because I've learned the crown doesn't make the king, the weight does, and I carry it easily now because I earned every ounce of it. Every betrayal was a hammer strike. Every heartbreak was another link in the chain. Every wound, another lesson in endurance. I am not fueled by rage anymore. Rage was the weapon that built the walls. But purpose is what fills them. You see, there's a difference between power gained and power owned. Anyone can take the throne for a moment, but only those who've walked through hell can keep it. My enemies burned their bridges. I burned the map because I no longer need to go back. There is nothing behind me but ghosts, and ghosts don't scare kings. Now I rule not with wrath, but with restraint. That's real power. Not the scream, but the silence before it. Not the sword, but the hand that decides when not to use it. I don't chase vengeance. I embody consequence. Every soul that doubted me now serves as stone in the fortress of my name. Every voice that mocked me now echoes in the silence that surrounds my throne. They see me now, not as human, but as legend. And that's exactly what happens when you turn pain into prophecy. They whisper my name with reverence and fear, because they don't know whether to hate me or worship the version of themselves they'll never become. But I don't rule for them. I rule for the fire that never died, for the child who cried in silence, for the broken man who refused to stay broken, for every scar that begged to mean something and finally does. This dominion, it isn't about control, it's about completion. I've stopped looking for peace. Peace is a myth for men who haven't met their demons. I made peace with mine, then crowned them. Now they sit beside me, silent and loyal, because even my darkness learned discipline. When I speak, my voice doesn't rise. It resonates. When I move, I don't rush. I command. And when I fall silent, the world leans in to listen. That's when you know you've reached dominion, when the world no longer controls your fire, but waits for your spark. I don't fear loss anymore. I've lost it all before, and that's my advantage. You can't threaten a man who's rebuilt himself from nothing. You can't manipulate a king forged from ashes. You can't destroy what's already walked through death and learn to smile there. My throne isn't for comfort. It's a reminder that survival was never enough. Dominance was the destiny. So I built it high, not to look down on the world, but to see it clearly. Every scar I earned now shines like scripture. Every lesson carved in silence, etched into the empire's design. And when they call me heartless, I nod, because a heart is fragile, and I've evolved beyond fragility. I don't need love to move me. I don't need hate to fuel me. I have something greater, direction. I'm not here to fit in. I'm here to overrule. The world is full of kings who begged for crowns, but the real ones, we built ours in fire. We didn't wait for validation. We forged legitimacy through pain. And now when I sit on this throne, I don't smile. I don't celebrate. I simply exist, because my existence is victory. They used to say I'd burn everything I touched. They were right, but they forgot that from fire. Empires rise. Now my silence commands more than their words ever could. My scars speak louder than their praise, and my empire stands where their doubt once did. I wear my crown of fire with calm hands, because true kings rule not by mercy, but by mastery of their own darkness. This is where the noise ends, where the fire lowers its voice, where the crown settles and the world finally understands. I did not rise to be seen. I rose to become inevitable. They called me heartless. They called me broken. They called me gone. But look closely. The man you left in the grave did not rot. He rooted. He reached. He rose. I no longer mistake quiet for weakness. I no longer confuse pain for punishment. Pain was a passage. Silence was a sanctuary. Darkness was a mentor whispering lessons the light could never teach. You wanted me to bleed. I did. And every drop learned to speak. It told me to let go of explanations, to stop pleading with the blind, to notice the sun, to stop handing my hunger to people satisfied with crumbs. I carried my dead names to the edge of the world and let the wind take them. I carried my old vows to the sea and let the tide erase them. I carried my softer ghosts through the ash fields and watched them kneel. They surrendered. I did not. Understand this. I do not rule because I conquered you. I rule because I conquered the need to prove anything to anyone. When that need died, I was finally free to become what the fire intended. I have no promises left to break. No walls left to beg, no doors left to knock on. I am the house now. I am the gate. I am the ground your footsteps hope to deserve. To the ones still breathing underwater, I hear you. To the ones who sleep with open eyes and clench their teeth when the room goes dark, I remember you. To the men with unburied storms in their chests, I am your forecast. You are not crazy. You are not weak. You are unfinished. They told you time heals. No, time hardens. Discipline heals. Purpose heals. Work heals. Facing the mirror until it bows its head, that heals. You don't need permission to begin again. You don't need forgiveness to reclaim your breath. You don't need an audience to crown your return. The throne is a posture first, a platform second. I walked through every room that once shamed me. They felt smaller. I visited every memory that once ruled me. It felt distant. I stood at the edge of the same cliff where I used to throw my hope away. And I built a bridge there. Now I cross it daily without looking down. Listen closely. Power is not the shout. Power is the stillness that decides when to speak. Power is the law you set on your own spine and never betray. Power is the mercy you deny your weakness and the grace you extend to your will. I do not measure myself against men anymore. Men are weather. I am climate. Men are waves. I am tide. Men are seasons. I am cycle. Let them talk about the past. I live in the afterward. Let them argue about the truth. I am the consequence. Let them barter with apology. I trade only in results. My empire does not glitter. It glows, low and certain, like coals that never die. My laws are simple, silence before speech. Discipline, before desire, mastery before mercy, purpose before peace. If you ask what I want now, the answer is everything and nothing. Everything I was meant to be. Nothing that demands I bend my spine to earn it. This is not a throne you sit on. It's a throne you stand under and hold with both hands. If it crushes you, you were not ready. If it steadies you, you were always chosen. I no longer count my scars. I inventory my weapons. Clarity, consistency, control. These are not decorations. They are dominion in human form. And if you wonder whether I fear falling again, I don't. Falling is how I learned the height of my return. Loss is how I learned the weight of my name. Silence is how I learned the tone of command. Remember this, and remember it well. They can break your heart, but only you can break your oath. Guard the oath. Guard the hours. Guard the fire that refuses to die when the room goes cold. I am not coming back to who I was. That door is dust. I am not proving that I survived. Survival is beneath me now. I am writing laws in the language of ash and gold. I am carving my future with the patience of stone. I am moving through the world like a quiet verdict. Look around. The ruins learn to sing. The ashes learn to build. The monster learn to rule without losing the lesson of the dark. And if you ever doubt what becomes of a soul that refuses to die in silence, look at me. I am the echo that did not fade. I am the flame that learned to hold its breath. I am the proof that hell can be a foundry if you stay long enough to learn its heat. Now, the prophecy stands where I stand, not written in stars, written in scars that gleam like constellations across a chest that forgot how to bow. Hear it. I will not dim. I will not kneel. I will not return to the hands that let me burn. I will carry my crown like a calm storm, and I will build until the horizon moves. You left a monster behind, yet from his quiet fire rose a king, and kings do not come back. They make the world come to them.